So today I'm going to do a video where I'm going to tell you how the for loop works a little bit better along with arrays, and then we're going to output that to the console. Yeah, we're here in my classroom because I kind of wanted to do this video for you, and you know, it'll help you out, especially when you get assignments later, when you have projects later that involve for loops or looping through an array. Okay? So why don't you open Replit now in your browser? Don't forget that you need to open the HTML, CSS, JavaScript part. I'll open mine and then we'll code it together. Alright, so right now we're in my REPL, and what we're going to do now is, why don't we first create an array? So we'll just say var, and we'll just call the array called R. In fact, you know, let's use something else. So let's say var, I like to use foods, and JavaScript, we're just going to build this basic array. So our first will be apple, and our second one, why don't we just, you know, just drop in some more food. So we'll just say, and then, you know, we'll say pear. Okay. And so that's your general array in JavaScript. It's flat, it's simple. And what we're going to do now is we're going to build a for loop that'll iterate through all these items in the array. And before we do that, I kind of wanted to for you to understand how to call this simple item in the array. So if I said console log, and I said foods, and if I want to call the banana, well, that's the index position number 1. So if you recall, we count things from 0. So 0 is apple, 1 is banana, and 2 is pear. So I would say foods bracket 1. All right. And if you look down here, the console is going to be in the bottom right hand side. And if I run this, and then you'll see banana as the output. So understanding that if we use this bracket to call something, that whatever's inside this bracket is how we call the item in the array. So why don't we combine what we've learned and build a for loop? So we'll say for, and we'll say for var I equals 0. And then that's your setup. And then we need a condition I is less than, and we'll say foods.length. Now we don't need to say 3 because let's pretend I had more items in the array, and you would have to always change this number. But if we simply said foods.length, that means whatever the length of the foods array is how long we'll count to. So remember that the length in the array is 3, but its index positions are 0, 1, and 2. So var I equals 0, setup. I is less than foods.length, condition, and then now we need an increment. So we'll say I plus plus. Okay? So what we'll do is we'll do the mustache braces, and now we're going to output it. So we'll say console.log, and then what are we going to output? Well, foods bracket, and what goes inside the bracket? The letter I, because I will mean whatever I is. So I will start at 0, and it'll go from 0, and go to 1, and then go to 2. So if we ran this right now, we have apple, banana, pear in the console on the bottom right. But let's say I wanted to add more things to this array. I could say tomato. I could say, you know, orange. Right? You could say whatever you wanted to. And if I ran it again, I don't have to change the for loop because it's however long this array is. And I run it, and here we go. It outputs all my values for me. Instead of doing this in this for loop, what if every time this for loop ran, I generated a random number, and based on that random number, I outputted a random food up to the length of the list. So instead of saying console.log foods I, well, I could actually just say, well, I could create another variable called x, and I'll say math.floor, math.random, because we want to generate a random number. And if you recall from our last lesson, this random number is between 0 and up to the number 1, but never 1. And floor basically just drops off the decimals. So if it's 1.9, it turns into 1. If it's 2.111, it turns into 2. So what am I multiplying this by? Well, I want to multiply it again by foods.length. And if I ran this, it should generate a random food every time. And now what we're going to do is, because we've generated a random number, we're going to say console.log foods bracket x. Let's run it. Apple, pear, apple, tomato, apple. If I ran it again, we're going to get different results. Banana, banana, orange, banana, orange. Right? There you go. Every time you run this, you get a bunch of different things. Because I'm generating a random number, I'm saving it as X, and I'm going to output it. How many times will I output it? Well, up to foods.length. But you could play with this, right? You don't have to do foods.length. You could just say, what if I wanted to run this 100 times? I could. If I hit run, I've generated 100 different results. Look at that. There's all your results, 100 of them. Okay? That should be pretty easy for you to understand. So if you don't, why don't I do this? Let's make some comments. We learned how to make comments in our previous slides. So JavaScript comment will say, let's say create a list of foods as an array. And then I'm going to create a for loop that runs 100 times. And then right here, I'll say generate a random number that multiplies by the food's length. And then finally, we'll say output this to the console. That's it. If you want, you can pause this now and write this code down and make sure you get all these comments too so you understand. I hope that was helpful in you understanding how the JavaScript arrays work and how it works with a for loop. So we would use this for loop to iterate through arrays, and especially if you have a lot of data in the array, you would just use a for loop to iterate through everything. We've also used a for loop to tell you that you can generate randomness inside the for loop and only choose certain things from the array. And I hope that was helpful for you. So if that was helpful for you, go ahead and leave a comment below, share this out with somebody else, subscribe to the channel, like it, do all that good stuff. All right, I'll see you later. Bye.